Hello, everybody out there in Rumble, X, and YouTube land. Welcome back to Diego Knows. I, of course, am Diego, and today we're going to talk about Outlander, about the first episode of this show, Outlander, which started in 2014. I'm sure you already know that, I'm actually surprised that I'm doing this myself, all right? Someone very close to me recommended this show. Yes, as a woman. Recommended this show to give it a chance because she's like watched every episode, whatever. It gets her all hot, whatever. I got shows that get me hot too that women don't watch, because it's sexist or whatever, and this is no different than that. I got no problem with the female genre, I know there's a lot of shows out there that get women wet, I get it. A lot of movies too, I get it. You notice that straight guys don't usually show up to those movies, It's usually like a bunch of women or teenage girls that go to that. This falls into that category. I'm sure there's a lot of middle-aged women out there that are frustrated with their boring lives and they wish that they could have some sort of a fantastical adventure back in time, back when men were men and stuff, and all that kind of crap. All right, so I get it, I get the appeal. This was a book. It started off as one of those trashy romance novels, It was a book called Outlander by a woman named Diana Gabaldon. I think I said that right. Diana Gabaldon. She wrote a series of these books. Of course, Netflix immediately gave her a shitload of money for the rights. And the next thing you know, boom, here we have a series, They did the first season, which cost a lot of money because it's historical. You got to get the setting and all that stuff right, And so they did that, and it was a hit. It was a hit with women, Women liked it, They fantasized that they were the main character. The main character's name is Claire Randall, and she's played by this British actress named Catriona Balfe. I don't know if she's British or not. Catriona Balfe. She plays this British woman, Claire Randall, who was a nurse during World War II, I guess she was working in Scotland or something. I don't know where the hell she was working. Not Scotland, but she visits Scotland with her husband, And her husband was also in World War II, but he had an office job. He was with intelligence. He planned. He worked with the logistics department. He planned a lot of covert operations, all right? And her husband's name is Frank Randall, And he's played by a guy named Tobias Menzies, all right? The cuck himself. So basically what I got out of this episode here, was this woman is frustrated with her life, of course, and rather than work on her, well, actually, she does try. I'm going to give her credit. She does try to work on her marriage, But it's pretty obvious in the very beginning, despite the fact that they have sex, it's pretty obvious that she's just not into him, She's been traumatized by the war. The first thing we see of her is her trying to hold an artery, try to pinch an artery inside of a wounded soldier's leg, because otherwise he's going to bleed to death. I mean, she was a nurse, She treated with a lot of suffering war casualties, a lot of patients, a lot of soldiers that were wounded. She was there, She's got a lot of blood on her, and she dealt with that daily because, it was World War II. And a lot of women, they volunteered to do nursing work and stuff. Women that didn't have children, that's what they did, And we needed nurses back then, especially, So, so that was her thing. Now real quickly, let's go over the cast real quick here. This show lasted for 7 seasons. It started in 2014. So the season here, the first season is from 2014 to 2015. 7 seasons, and they're working on an 8th season. So I don't know where the hell, how many different ways can you tell this story? I have no idea, but apparently it's got a fan following. I doubt I'm going to review a show that lasts for 7 seasons, or much less 8 seasons, But like I said, I'm going to give the first 3 episodes a shot and go from there. There is a show that is about to come out called, what the hell is it called? Something with Kim Kardashian, Not because I'm a fan of Kim Kardashian. I'm not. She represents everything I hate in women, is Kim Kardashian. But they're going to do a show that just is all about boss bitches and men all suck and all that. And that's perfect, fertile ground for me, to criticize, because criticism goes both ways, not just one way, You want to make a show how men all suck and men are all pieces of crap? Well, guess what, ladies, Yeah, your hands aren't that clean either, And I'm going to call that out when I see it. All right, so let's go into this show, Outlander. 7 seasons, my God. All right, so like I said, based on the book Outlander by Diana Gabaldon, and no, I'm not going to read the book. Catriona Balfi plays Claire Randall. Sam Hoogan, or Hoohan, or whatever, he plays the stud, Jamie Fraser, who's the Highlander. Yes, there can be only one Highlander, but with no chopping off your heads and electrical storms and immortality. Okay, Highlander. Now that's a good show. I don't know about this. I'm still like trying to figure this show out. But Highlander, that was a great show. Okay, Duncan MacLeod of the Clan MacLeod. You know, chopping off heads left and right, man. Yes. Adrian Paul did a great. Unfortunately, he got blacklisted in Hollywood. Like nobody will hire him now. But he was Highlander for about as long as this show, like 8 seasons. And then he did 2 movies after that. Okay, the movies weren't so good. Although I did like a Highlander Endgame, because that's where Duncan MacLeod and Connor MacLeod got reunited, since he was in the pilot episode of the show. Okay, so you had the Highlander from the movies, you know, Christopher Lambert playing Connor MacLeod, and then you had Adrian Paul, the Highlander from the TV show, playing Duncan MacLeod, and they were in the first episode of the show together, but the movies continued with Connor, and then in Highlander Endgame, Duncan and Connor are both the protagonists. Okay, the 2 MacLeods are the protagonist and the Highlander, and they got to fight Jacob Kell. And all. Okay, I know a little bit about. I love the Highlander. Okay, Highlander was a fucking man. Okay, Duncan MacLeod, he dressed sharp, he was handsome, he was fit, he worked out all the damn time. Okay, his clothes were impeccable. He had the ponytail, I know, which is dated, but other than that, you know, I mean, his fashion sense was on point. Okay, and he was very masculine. He had the deep, you know, Scottish voice. I am Duncan MacLeod of the Clan MacLeod. You know, he acted very masculine. Okay, yeah, he banged a lot of girls, even immortal women. He banged immortal women too. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. You know what? He's a fucking man. Okay, and he wasn't afraid to get physical with another man that tries to challenge him. You know, that's who Duncan MacLeod was. You know, and that's a role model. He had honor, though. He wasn't some jerk off. You know, he treated people with respect, you know, but he didn't tolerate people that did not treat him with respect. You know what I mean? He was a nice guy until he had a reason not to be nice. Okay, and that's the perfect example of masculinity right there. Watch Highlander, man. Watch the Highlanders. I got every episode. I downloaded every single episode. It's on Amazon Prime, okay? That show is great. You want to talk about a show you watch with your son? I know the late, great fucking, Stan Kirsch. I know he passed away. He committed suicide. I'm not supposed to say that word on YouTube. Damn. He ended himself like a few years ago, and it was just sad. But he played like the sidekick, who turns out to be immortal too. That was a great show about the Highlands of Scotland, okay? About the Highlander, okay? And I'm pretty sure it's a lot better than this movie, like in this TV show, okay? But it's the reason I bring this up is because I know a little bit about the Highlands because I watched the Highlander movies, all right? There can be only one. This is the Highlands as well. So Jamie Fraser, I guess, is going to be the stud, okay, who Claire falls in love with while she's back in time. Okay, he's going to fill her out and give her some quickening. All right, which is awesome, I guess. Okay, the problem is she's married. But then again, I'm thinking to myself, why the hell even have the husband there? Do we even need him? We don't need him. Okay, you don't put a gun, you don't show a gun in a movie in the first act unless you're going to fire it by the third act. Okay, that's script writing 101 right there. Okay, if this whole TV show is going to be about a woman who goes back in time and falls in love with a guy, then why the hell do we need the husband there? Why do we have to devote so much time to the husband? Okay, like what the hell? He's going to be a nothing. Okay, where she's going, he ain't going to be there. Okay, and her pussy's going to be hunger for some fucking Highlander cock. Okay, that he ain't got. Okay, so why even bother with that? You know what I mean? Why even have her the adulteress? Why not just give her a clean slate? Let her be single. You know, we already know that her uncle that raised her was an archaeologist. Okay, so she just went there on her own. You know, she wanted to look at the ruins. After her husband died in the fucking war. How about that? And she was a nurse, and her husband died in the war. So now she's aimless. She doesn't know what to do. You know, she's traumatized by all the death that she saw working as a nurse. Okay, so maybe she wanted to dig up her family roots and stuff. You know. Maybe dig up her uncle's roots since she didn't really know her parents. You know, I mean, she's rich. She was born wealthy. So what the hell? Let Claire just go out there on her own. We don't need the husband there. We don't need that. You see what I mean? I mean, I know why later on, because this show is like fucking Dark Shadows. You ever watch Dark Shadows? Okay, there was the old show from like the late 60s. okay, in the early 70s, which was a great show. It was a soap opera budget, but it was really good. I watched it as a kid. I watched the reruns as a kid. That was really good. And then they rebooted Dark Shadows in 1990. It lasted one season. That was with Ben Cross, played Barnabas Collins in that one. Okay, and they did the same thing in Dark Shadows. Okay, they couldn't afford to hire actors. They couldn't afford to hire a whole new set of actors to play when a character goes back in time. They have to interact with people. They couldn't afford to hire a whole new set of actors to play these people in a different time period. So what did they do? They took the modern day actors and just gave them different identities and different clothes and had them play other characters. They're the ancestor of whatever of the present day characters, so that's why they look exactly alike. Whatever. And that didn't even happen all the time, but that's what they did. That's what they did, okay? And that's what this that's what this show's doing, okay? The actor that plays Frank Randall, Tobias Menzies, we're going to see him again, just not as Frank Randall. He's going to play his own ancestor. What's his name? Blackjack something? Blackjack Randall? Yeah, okay, so, I know why they did it for budget reasons, but it's still, you can't help but not notice that, all right? It kind of takes you out of it, okay? Now, Dark Shadows did it, but Dark Shadows was a low-budget soap opera, okay? So, of course, we knew they couldn't afford to hire new actors. Okay, they had to keep the cast within reason. So, of course, a lot of the cast members had to perform double duty. They had to play two different characters on the show, okay, in order to save money. All right, so yeah, that's going to happen here, and you can't help but notice that, okay? All right, so let's see here. Claire Randall, who is she? She's a British World War II nurse, okay? And basically the show, she goes from 1945, when World War II ended, to 1743. Okay, so that's 202 years. She goes back in time. Okay, and she falls in love with a Highlander named Jamie Fraser, and he's from the clan Fraser of Lovat, but I guess he's like hanging out with the clan called Mackenzie clan. We'll see about that as I continue to watch the show. Okay, and like I said, actors play multiple characters on the show. Season 1, episode 1. Okay, Claire feels very unfulfilled in her life, despite the fact that she survived World War II. So right there, you've got the typical trope that women never notice in these shows. Their complete fucking ingratitude. Okay, they just survived the most devastating and deadly conflict, okay, in the history of the planet. She survived it with no wounds, okay? Her country didn't get taken over. Her family didn't get wiped out, okay? She still got all her limbs and everything, okay? She's fine. Okay, but yet, of course, she's unfulfilled and unhappy with her life. Okay, it just sucks. Everything sucks. Okay, of course, it's going to be a man's fault. All right, so she's unfulfilled despite surviving World War II. Okay, there's no more, she didn't have any more amputees screaming in pain for her to take care of, so she's unfulfilled with her life. Okay, she's actually more concerned about never living someplace long enough to own a vase. She sees a vase in a store. And then she comes to the realization that she's been very transient her entire life. She's never lived anywhere long enough to buy a vase. And she notices that when she looks at a vase in the mirror. I mean, inside the window, okay? Like, I guess that's supposed to be a metaphor for an unfulfilled life, because a vase holds things. But when you buy the vase, there's nothing in it. You got to put something in the vase, okay? And she's basically a vase, okay? There's nothing in her life, okay? There's nothing of importance that's growing inside of her, okay? That she's nurturing or anything like that. She's holding together, nothing, okay? That's the the metaphor there. Okay, so she drives to Scotland with her husband. We finally see her husband there. Okay, so her husband's name is Frank, okay? And they're going on what he calls their second honeymoon to celebrate the end of the war, okay? Well, that's the official story, but they don't say it to each other, but the real reason they're going on this road trip to the Highlands of Scotland, despite the fact that they're both British, is because they have not really seen each other in the past 5 years, okay? In the past 5 years, they've only seen each other 10 times. Okay, because of the war. He had a very important job with military intelligence, and she was a nurse on the battlefields. Okay, so they didn't really spend much time together. I'm pretty sure they weren't married very long before the war broke out, and they had to separate. So they really don't know each other, is what's going on. They're married, the war's over, and now they're back together, but they've changed so much that they don't really recognize each other. They're not the same people they were when they got married. Okay, they both experienced many things. And personally, from what I can tell from this, she doesn't really seem that into him. Okay, not really. I'm not getting that sense that she's so happy that he's alive and she wants to be with him. I mean, even me, like when I see my girlfriend or something, right? When I see her, I mean, she runs to me and fucking jumps on me and starts kissing me over and over again, okay? And that's just a girl I haven't seen in a couple of days, you know? And we still talk on the phone and text and stuff like that, but, you know, that lets me know that she's very happy to see me. But this woman doesn't give off those vibes at all. She's just like, oh, okay, hi, how you doing? Let's be respectful towards each other, you know, we'll be pleasant and polite, you know, but there's no there's no like sexuality there, okay? There's no horniness there. There's no I can't live without you there from either side. You see what I mean? And to me, that's just like, damn, where's the passion? You just survived the worst crisis of the 20th century and you have no passion for each other? You know, how many widows are out there? Okay? You know what I mean? How many people lost their wives in concentration camps and stuff, you know, and bombings, you know, when their cities got bombed. I mean, there's so many, like the ungratefulness is just right there. Where's it? Right in front of you. Okay. And the fact that the author doesn't even realize this. Okay. She's so concerned. Claire is so concerned with not having a fulfilling life. Okay. She's not grateful for the fact that she just survived the worst calamity of the 20th century, you know, unharmed. She still has her money. She still has her looks. She still has whatever the hell she started with. Okay. She just like has been through a lot more now. She's seen a lot more death now and stuff like that. Violence. But otherwise she's fine. You know, it's just ungratefulness, which is typical for a chick show. They're never grateful for what they had. They always want more. They feel entitled to want more. Okay. So that's going on here. Okay. You know, so they drive to Scotland. They're there to get reacquainted. The neighborhood has plenty of houses marked in blood. So they're in a Scottish neighborhood, and they notice there's blood on all the fucking doorways, all the door frames of all the houses. When she goes inside and talks to the hotel clerk when they're checking in, we find out that's a Scottish tradition. Okay, so they're setting up a lot of stuff that we're going to see later on in the show. When she goes back in time, we're actually going to see all this stuff. Okay, and now we're going to realize why we saw this stuff in 1945 was because all this stuff that was going on in 1743. Okay, so anyway, so they're just trying to set all that up. Okay, as they check into the room, okay, they learn that the blood over the house doors is a Scottish custom. Okay, now Frank is a historian. Okay, I guess he's a professor or something. He got accepted at Yale or some shit, or Cambridge or wherever the fuck it is. Anyway, so her husband, like I said, is a historian. Okay, and we learn a lot about history from him. We learn a lot about this is a festival called Samian, okay, which was a pagan festival. Eventually, it got turned into Halloween, okay, and also Yule, you know, which was a pagan festival, which eventually became Christmas. Okay, they merged these two things together. All right, okay, and I know a little bit about this, like the Christmas tree and stuff, like that's all Yule. Okay, well, actually, that's Charles Dickens, but you know, that came from the German thing, you know, the Tannenbaum thing, you know, stuff like that. Okay, that's all Yule. Santa Claus, that's you know, there was no Santa Claus when Jesus was hanging from the cross. All right. Anyway, when he was born. Okay, so yeah, Yule became Christmas. We learned some stuff like that. Before the war, we find out that Claire and Frank were very close. Apparently, we didn't get to see any of that. Okay, but during the 5 years of war, they only saw each other 10 different times. Okay, and they had changed a lot in that time. All right. Okay, and to me, when Claire narrates this, that's code for she doesn't give a shit about him anymore. Okay, and I'm pretty sure she fucked around on him during the war. Okay, now I know he worked intelligence, so he was pretty safe. Like he wasn't out there in the front lines getting shot at or nothing or blowing things up. Okay, so he had a kosher job. He worked in intelligence. Okay, he worked behind a desk. Okay, very stressful to be sure, but not dangerous. All right, so and she worked as a nurse. Okay, patching up wounded soldiers. Okay, so they changed a lot during that time. Okay. And, any woman, typical woman under those circumstances, okay, would have fucked around. She's surrounded by men. She gets horny and all that kind of stuff, okay? Of course she would have fucked around, okay? And that's true, okay? A lot of guys, now maybe not so much in the 1940s, okay? Not as much as today, but it still happened. You gotta remember, there was no DNA test back then, okay? There's a reason the women wanted to fuck their husband's soldiers as soon as they got back, okay? Because there was a baby already on the way. You see what I mean? Things like that. Abortion was very difficult to have back then. There was no birth control. Okay. And society used to shame women for doing that as well. So there's a lot of reasons why women did not screw around. Unlike today, where there's no reason for them not to. Okay. So all that was going on here. I don't believe that she was faithful to him. Like I said, she doesn't really seem that into him right now. Okay. And they're supposed to be on their second honeymoon. And on honeymoon, you're supposed to be all giddy and shit and fucking horny for each other. Anyway. So that's going on here. Okay. What happens? They notice that the bed is squeaky and their hotel room is squeaky. So what do? Do they start to fuck? No, they just jump on the bed. I'm not making that up. They start jumping on the bed like a couple of kids. Surprised the bed frame did not break. Okay. They start jumping on the bed, making a lot of squeaky noise. Okay. Both of them are jumping on she does it first and he joins her in his suit and tie and everything. She's in her dress and they're jumping on the bed. He didn't even take his shoes off. They're jumping on the damn bed. Okay, making a lot of squeaky noise. Then we see the fat old lady hotel clerk. She's up there listening to this. You know, she's like, huh? You know, she thinks they're fucking fast on the bed, but they're not. They're just jumping on it. All right. And she couldn't remember what Frank's laugh. During her narration, she says she could not remember what Frank's laugh was like. Okay, during the war. You know, she couldn't remember her husband. Okay, this little idiosyncrasies about her husband. Now, she knew her husband and her used to laugh before the war all the time, but after the war, she forgot what it looked like, what it sounded like to see him laugh, okay? Which once again tells you that she's not the same person anymore, okay? That she doesn't hold him. She didn't hold on to the thought of being back with him during the war, okay? There was something else that was giving her strength during the war to keep going, okay? Despite all the death and blood, and it sure as fuck wasn't memories of her husband. Okay, so that's another indicator right there. Okay, now she never really gave two shits about him, despite what she says. Okay, so that's going on. And by the way, he was fixated on her during the war. He used to make doodles of her hand. He used to he memorized what her hand looked like. He used to draw her hand all the time, which makes no fucking sense. He even got in trouble once by a commanding officer because he wrote on some important papers. He doodled a picture of her hand, and he got reprimanded for it. All right. So he was obsessed with her during the war. She was not obsessed with him. Okay, which is typical feminist shit. Okay, all the feminist shows do that. Okay, you know, and to some point it's true. Okay, most women do not really like men. Okay, and I understand that it's true. Most women do not like men. Okay, but all women need men. Okay, women tend to not like men. You know, they don't really want men, but they need them, which kind of sucks. Okay, because they need them for life, but they don't necessarily want them. Okay, every feminist loves talking about this, and to a lot of extent, it's very true, and I understand that. Okay, however, on the flip side of that, that feminists do not like to talk about, and you will not see in a show like this. Okay, but I'm going to tell you right now, is that most men want women, but they don't need them. That's the truth. Women for men is extra. It's frosting on the cake. Okay? It's sugar added to the lemonade. You see what I mean? It makes it taste a lot better. But can you drink it without? Yeah, of course you can. It just won't taste as good. You see what I mean? And no feminist ever wants to talk about that. Okay? I'm sure the writers of the show aren't even going to go there. But it's true. It's true. Women don't necessarily want men, but they need them. Okay? And men want women, but they don't need them. It's true. So it's a paradox, but it's the actual truth. All right. Moving right along. Okay. So anyway, so the next day they decide to drive to the Highlands of Scotland, and he gives a little history lesson about this big hill that we see there called Cockamon Rock. Yeah, that's the name of it. And its significance during the wars with England during the 17th and 18th centuries. And he gives a little history lesson about how, like, you know, the generals would have been on the top of that hill so they could see everything. And they could see the army advancing against them and all that kind of shit that nobody cares about except military historians like me. But I know you don't care about that, okay? Okay, so of course she doesn't not give a shit about this, okay? It's because she doesn't realize, okay, that what he's doing is he's trying to share something that he loves, which is history, with his wife. Because he loves her too, okay? And that's true, okay? Guys, you know, when we get excited about certain things, we want to share that with our wives. We want to share that with our girlfriends. We want to share that with the people that we love. Okay, for example, me. I get excited with like old TV shows, okay? Like my girlfriend, right? I'm over here watching The Love Boat, okay? You go on YouTube and they have like all the actors that were on The Love Boat for like season 4 of The Love Boat, right? And they're just showing the intros, okay, where it shows the actor and the name of the actor, right? While you hear the Love Boat song, okay? And I'm watching this for fun, because what I like to do for fun is while I'm watching these Love Boat intros, as soon as I see the actor's face and their name, I'm trying to remember where do I know them from? What else have they been in besides this episode of Love Boat? And I try to get as many correct as I can, all right? And I just do it for fun, because to me it's fun. You know, when you're watching all some Burt Convy show, I'm like, Burt Convy, oh my God, you know, like that. I go crazy. Okay, like that. Okay, oh, that's Oscar from $6 Million Man. Okay, or like stuff like that. I do that, all right, because it's fun, you know. And my girlfriend saw me doing that, you know. And do you think she gives two shits about like who was on the Love Boat? She wasn't even born when that show was on. Okay, all right. So she didn't know shit about the Love Boat. She didn't know who the fuck these actors are. Most of them are dead today. You know, she didn't watch any of the movies or TV shows that they were on. She doesn't care. You know, so why the hell would I do that in front of her? You know why? Okay, it's because she's watching me enjoy something. You see what I mean? She sees the way my eyes light up when I'm doing something like that. Okay? She likes seeing me that way. She likes seeing me all excited and animated and really into something. Okay? And she pointed out, oh my God, the way your face goes when you're doing that is just so, it's beautiful. You know, she said that to me the other day, you know, because I was just, you know, trying to name every actor that was on Love Boat, you know, like during a certain season of Love Boat, you know, like, you know, but it's the way my face lights up when I'm doing that, when she can tell that I'm really into something, really passionate about something, you know, and that's what he's trying to do here. That's what Frank is trying to do to Claire. This is something, his history, his genealogy is something very, very important to him. He's fascinated with it, okay? He, you know, not obsessed with it, but it's something that he cares a lot about. That's the reason they're in the Highlands of Scotland for their honeymoon, okay? And he wants to share that enthusiasm with her. He wants to give her a little bit of that passion, to let her know that, hey, listen, I'm not some fucking robot. I'm not some fucking stiff. There's things that I get crazy about too, you know? And women like that. They like seeing their men with passion. They got to be passionate about something, not just the woman. They got to be passionate about something else. Okay? Like you watch something like Brave, because I'm thinking about the Highlands. Look at Braveheart with Mel Gibson. Okay, why do you think the fucking princess loved him so much? Because he was so fucking passionate about defeating the British. You know? Every man dies. Not every man truly lives. You see what I mean? Or fucking, look at like something like fucking Last of the Mohicans, okay? Where Hawkeye is like, no, don't wait, I will come back for you. You know, because he's passionate about defeating the French or the whoever the fuck they were, okay? Whatever, you know what I'm talking about, all right? See, that's it, okay? That turns women on. Okay, and that's what he's trying to do here. He's trying to get her turned on by sharing something that he's passionate about with her. Not because she's interested in it herself. She's not. She don't give a shit. And unfortunately, she doesn't look like she gives a shit when he tells her all this stuff. You know, he's speaking into the wind. She doesn't really care. You know? Okay, you know. So just, you know, like, that's why guys do that, okay? And Claire, we find out a flashback that Claire was raised by her uncle Lamb. I'm not sure if that's his real name. He was an archaeologist, so she comes from money, okay? After her parents died, her uncle raised her, so we see a flashback of her as a young girl helping her uncle excavate something, maybe a fossil or some shit, and she lights a cigarette for him. And then I thought she was going to smoke it, even though she looks like she's 12 years old. But no, she gives him the cigarette. He smokes it. Okay. During one of his cave digs, we see a younger version of her there. Okay. So obviously, like all feminists love, yes, Claire was a tomboy into guy things, not girly things. She was into guy because that's what's cool. Because feminists only accept women that reject femininity. Okay, you got to be a boss bitch. You got to be tough as nails. You got to fuck around on your spouse. You got to make a shitload of money. You got to dress nice. You got to own nice things and shit. Don't have any fucking kids. Don't fucking settle down, because that's going to take away from your fucking boss bitchiness. Okay, you see what I mean? Yeah, exactly. And so, of course, she's like that. You can do anything that a boy can do. You can do it better. Like that. So, of course, she's one of those. Okay, there is no other kind on these shows. All right, so there's that. She's a tomboy, okay, and she points out that the things that she did, like digging ditches and stuff, helping her uncle, was considered unladylike for a woman of her class, or a young lady of her class. So she grew up rich and proper. Okay, so that's going on here. Okay, and like I said, feminists, they like the show because she acts like a man. Okay, so that's why they love it. Okay, she likes getting dirty. She likes doing manly things. Of course she does. Okay, we can't have a woman act like a fucking woman on the show. She's got to be better than a man at everything. Okay, so Frank is into his family genealogy. That's his hobby, like I said. And it turns out that Claire's hobby is botany, specifically medicinal botany. Okay, and this, of course, is going to come back later on in the show. She loves to study plants and harvest plants that have medicinal value. Okay, because she was a nurse. Okay, so you know she can tell like if I can make a herb out of this particular plant, I can use it to fight infections and shit like that. Okay, so that's and of course that's going to come in very helpful. Okay, in the fucking 17th century or in the like 18th century. Okay, when they didn't have that stuff. Okay, so obviously they're projecting what's going to happen. They're foreshadowing, what's going to happen with her. How she's the perfect one to go back in time. Okay, okay. She likes boyish things. Okay, and she knows a lot about medicine. Okay, herbal medicine. Okay, homeopathic medicine, that kind of shit. Okay, so anyway, so that's going on here. Okay, so she likes botany, for medicinal purpose. That's just another code thing for she fucking likes to fucking grow weed. All right, so Frank discovers that this castle that they're in front of, these ruins of this castle that they're at, Castle Loach. I don't know how that's pronounced. It's Gaelic. I can't fucking pronounce it. Castle Loach was the ancestral home of the Mackenzie clan. Okay, the clan Mackenzie. Okay, until the 19th century. Okay, so they explore the ruins of this castle. Okay. So that's what they're doing. Okay, while Claire was a nurse in the army, we find out that Frank worked with British intelligence, MI5. Yes, the James Bond shit. He dwelled in the past to escape the present. And he notes the possibility that one of his ancestors had been to this castle before. Okay, so she's already done a whole psychological profile on her husband. And the reason he's so obsessed with the past is because it diverts him, it distracts him from the present. Okay, that's how he got through the war. That's probably how he dealt with all the stress. Is he kept fantasizing about a different time when wars were fought in a different way, okay, instead of the way they're fought in 1945, okay. So she sees that as probably a flaw of her husband, a psychological tool, a psychological crush that he needed to get through the war. Was he needed to spend a lot of time, studying the past, okay, so that he could, distract himself from the present, okay. Okay, of course she has no psychological problems because she's a boss bitch and she's perfect. Okay, as all women are on these shows. All right, so that's going on here. Okay, and of course, Frank believes that it's possible that his ancestors had been inside this castle before. All right. Claire believes that Frank is traumatized by all the men that died during the covert operations that he planned during the war. Okay, so he's suffering from a form of PTSD. Okay, and I understand a little bit about that. I'm a veteran myself, and I fought in a war. Okay, so basically, he blames himself. He worked in intelligence, so his job was to plan covert operations. Okay, he would assign these operations to spies. Okay, and a lot of them died. Okay, because his plans weren't perfect, or they got found out or something. Okay, so he blames himself for all the men that died following his orders. Okay, see what I mean? So that's probably like why he deals with that. That's what his wife thinks, at least. They explore the castle. Okay, and she seems happy for a moment. She actually smiles while they're there. Okay, they find a basement room downstairs. Okay, and they wonder what was this room for? Trolls? Because this must have been a kitchen or some shit like that. That's what they think. All right, and of course she gets horny while they're exploring the ruins. Okay, there's nobody there. There's no tour guide there. No fence. No admission or anything, you don't pay nothing to explore it. There's nobody that works there making sure you don't touch or steal things. They just go inside this castle. It's probably not safe. It collapse on them at any moment, but they go in there anyway. All right. Okay. And this thing, the basement might be a room for trolls. And of course, she gets horny while she's sitting there. Okay. On the table, she gets horny and she spreads her legs and tells him to fucking come over here and eat this shit. Okay. To guess what? Turns out she left her fucking underwear, her panties back at the hotel room. Okay. So she's ready for this. Oh my fucking God. Okay, so of course he goes down on her, okay, and eats her out because that's important. Okay. He doesn't get a blowjob because the man's pleasure does not matter in these shows. It's only the woman's pleasure that matters. Okay, just like in real relationships. Okay, so that's going on here. He eats her out and they spent a good amount of time just to show that. Okay, the next scene, they're at a mansion. I don't know if it's Frank and Claire's mansion or if it's the people that they're there talking to, if it's their mansion, I don't know, but they're in a fucking mansion. Okay, and Frank discovered, he's talking to some priest or something, a clergyman or something, and there's a woman there in the kitchen too, an older lady. Okay, and Frank discovers the name of his 18th century ancestor. His name was John Blackjack Randall. Okay, so he finds out that he had an ancestor in the 1700s named John Blackjack Randall, who, by the way, later on the show will be played by the same actor. See how that works? Okay, so we find out about his ancestor, okay, and he commanded a British garrison, which means that he's evil. Okay, why? Because everybody knows that the British were the evil empire and the Scottish were the ones that were fighting for their rights and their freedom and all that kind of shit against the evil British. Yeah, whatever the fuck. Okay, we all saw Braveheart. Okay, so that's going on here. He commanded John Blackjack Randall commanded a British garrison. Okay, the Brits are referred to as Sassenachs by the Scottish. Okay, there's a word for the British called Sassenachs. Okay, by the Scottish. And the English translate is Gaelic. So the English translation to Sassenachs is Outlander. Yes, Outlander. So now you know where the title of the show comes from. Okay, it comes from the word Sassenachs, which is Gaelic for Outlander, or not of this land. Okay, so that's going on here. And then the priest's wife or something, some woman comes out of the kitchen and offers some tea or some shit to Claire. Claire's just sitting there bored out of her mind. And she wants to have a private conversation with Claire in the kitchen. So Claire and this older woman, we don't know who she is yet, they walk into the kitchen together to have a private conversation. All right. Okay, I'm going to stop right here, but I will be back soon to continue my review of Outlander Season 1, Episode 1. Okay, I thank you for watching this long, and I'll see you soon on the next one. Bye.